Right, welcome back. Today is a bit of an emergency podcast. I say emergency because it's something I decided to do like 2 days ago. So for anyone who follows me on Instagram or knows me personally, you'll see the other day, what date is it today, Chris? The 3rd of March. So on the 28th of Feb, so we're talking a few days ago, my house got completed. Now, everyone seen this the other day and he was like, I have no idea you had this going on, and I've kept this to myself, kept it close to my chest, and today I kind of want to speak about it. One, to speak about the absolute fucking nightmare I've had going on for like the last 5.5 years, but also because there is some inspiration wrapped up in this story. And I think I can put it across to you guys, because the amount of people who've popped up to me and said, wow, I'm not doing anything with my life and my problems are like half the size of the ones that you've got, like I've got no excuse. And I don't want to say it in a way of going like, oh, I've got this going on, but I kind of want to do it in a way of like, well, yeah, I have had all this going on in the background and I've done well for myself, which means that you can as well. So the other day, my dad's house became my house. So I'm going to go all the way back to 5.5 years ago. And I'm going to explain exactly what this means, what has happened, and just give you some context, because you probably all scratch your head going, what do you mean, like your dad's house become your house? Like what you say? Like that is the most out of context thing. So I'm going to give you a little bit of context. Well, I say a little bit. I'm going to completely dive in. The other day on my story, I did a 10 minutes on my Instagram story, which is a lot. I don't think I've ever done anything as long in my life. And the amount of people that actually watched it, I thought, this is a good idea. So we're going to go ahead with it. So 25th of November, 2017 was the day that my dad died, right? Now, when he passed away, usually if you lose people who've lost someone close or they've lost someone before, you'll know you get that bit of a tricky period afterwards where you'll pretty much be sat there and you take a bit of time to grieve, you take a little bit of time to get the affairs in order, all these different things, right? I didn't have that luxury. Obviously, it's not a luxury losing your dad, but afterwards, I didn't have the luxury that most people have where you take this time to kind of grieve and take this time to have that process, which enables you to obviously not really get over, but learn how to deal with it, get your mental health sorted, and pretty much get you ready to embark on this new chapter. I did not have that, right? So, long story short, when my dad died, there was basically only me that was around, right? Pretty much everyone on my dad's side of the family has passed away. I'm the only one with the Clark name left. So I'm like the lone soldier, the lone hero going on my own, carrying the family name. I have an auntie who's married, but she has not bothered with me in the last like 5.5 years. I don't mean that in a funny way. She just literally hasn't bothered with me like whatsoever since the funeral. So because I've had to deal with all this, and I got thrust into what has been like a crazy chapter of my life, I've learned a lot of stuff, I've made a lot of mistakes, and ultimately I've come out of it a better person, which is what I'm getting at with this episode. So after my dad passed, basically didn't have any time whatsoever, got thrust into obviously going to the hospital, getting the final little bits done, like reading the autopsy reports, whatever else that you've got to do. And then I pretty much just got thrown straight into having to sort out his funeral on my own, having to sort like the day later after my dad died, I literally was like going to Vodafone and ringing people up, like cancelling his direct debits. Like it's not really something that someone's son should have to do, but it's what I had to do. And obviously I've kept this secret like for like 5.5 years, which is why I kind of want to speak about it today, because there's so much to it. So obviously the day later I'm sorting all that stuff out, I'm cancelling his contracts, I'm ringing up about his debts and stuff that he's got with like credit cards and finances and whatever else. And I'm thrust into actually sorting out his funeral, like, which is bizarre on its own. Like you're choosing your dad's coffin, you're choosing like when he's going to get buried, how it's going, where he's going to get buried, all these different things, right? And straight after all that's done, once the dust is settled, I'm pretty much thrust straight into a legal battle. Now, there's a few people that are involved with this story that I'm not going to name. One, because I'm not that type of guy. I don't drag people's name through the mud. But two, because I'm not sure whether legally it's something that I should actually be doing. I'm not sure whether I'm kind of breaking some kind of law if I bring them into it, like a defamation of character type thing. So I'm not gonna talk about them. They're gonna stay nameless for this podcast because I'm nice like that. But basically, there was me, and a lot of people don't know this. I've got a little brother who I've not seen properly for like 6 or 7 years during all this time that's gone on. So there was me and there was him who were like the sole beneficiaries. Now, because he was so young, it was his mum that had to represent him. I have no problem with my little brother whatsoever. In fact, I hope at the back end of all this, like, he actually tries to speak to me. I know he's tried to like reach out a couple times before, or like I think he's like tried following me on Instagram and stuff, and I've blocked him. Because it sounds like awful, but like I've had that much going on legally. You'll understand by the end of it. I just didn't want any hiccups coming up. Like I didn't want him to speak to me, and then that can kind of like cause stuff legally, because that's how like delicate this whole situation got. So I have no problem with him whatsoever. He was a baby when this happened. He was a kid. I think he was like 10, 11 years of age, and obviously his mum had to represent him. So while all this is going on, his mum asked me to go around the house, and I'm thinking, oh, she'll say like, oh, I'm sorry for the loss of your dad. Is there anything you need from me? First question I get asked, first, number one question, right? Anyone in this situation would turn around and go, how have you been? Are you coping okay? First question she asked me, what's happening with the money? I wish I was making that up. She's literally like, what's happening with the money? If that's not someone who has got an agenda in place that is literally like, I'm going to pick the bones and take whatever we can, then I don't know what is. And obviously I lost my head at that moment in time. I was 23 years of age. I was young. I was hurting. I was going through probably the most difficult stage of my life because I just lost my dad. So obviously, I didn't take that news too well. But I had to bite the bullet, come to terms with the fact that legally, I have got to go through it with these people, because he obviously, because we're the sole beneficiaries, me and him, he goes 50, I go 50. But that's where shit starts to get like really confusing. So bear in mind, this is in 2017. Today, we're on the 3rd of March, 2023. This all got done like 3 days ago. So my dad died when I was 23. I'm 28 now. I'm 29 in July. That's how long this has taken to go through. So if you can imagine the pressure cooker I've been in for like 5.5 years, it's been an absolute nightmare, to be honest with you. And then obviously it starts getting really annoying from there on out, because as I said to you, it's a case of them trying to like pick the bones. And this isn't me like trying to like badmouth anyone. This is me saying, calling a spade a spade. It is what it is. So like, little things like when I moved one of my mates into the house, because plain and simply I was lonely. Like, I'm not sure whether anyone's ever like lived with a parent and lost them and then they're on their own in the house. You get home and there's a phrase which is dead silence, and I didn't know what it meant until my dad actually died. And I get home and it's just silent, no noise in the house. Like, you used to hearing the TV, you used to hear like the washing machine, someone like coughing, talking, whatever. You used to hear something, then you get in and it's just complete silence, right? So obviously, I get home, I've kind of got all that different stuff to deal with. So I moved my friend in, because I hated living on my own. And to be honest with you, I was just like losing my mind. Like, my mental health and my mood was just like really, really low. So I moved one of my mates in, and I wasn't really too bothered about the money. He was like, but he felt cheeky, and he was like, I'm going to give you some money. And I was like, just give me like a couple of £100 a month, like, which is nothing really, like living in a house, because rent is like through the roof, mortgage is like through the roof. Like, a couple of £100 is pretty much just, I'll pay my way to be here. The other half, which I'll refer to them as during this podcast, the other half of the estate, who obviously I mentioned earlier on, my little brother's mum and stuff, caught wind of this, spoke to the solicitor, and the solicitor was like, oh, just so you know, they're entitled to half of this money that you're getting from your friend. If that isn't trying to make a bad situation worse, if that isn't trying to like rub salt in the wounds and make someone's situation even more difficult, because if you cared, you just want someone to like actually be good. And these people have the audacity to refer to me as family, which they're just not. Like, even this day and age, I still think they refer to me as like a family member, which we just aren't. Do you know what I mean? Like, especially like no family member of mine, like, I would never treat them in that way. I'd always want the utmost for them. Like, I'd want them to be cared for, want them to be looked after. I wouldn't ever like try and take half of £200 off them because it's in the estate. Like, that is someone who is blatantly trying to get out for themselves. So this is where things start to get like really, really messy. And this takes absolutely ages, because obviously we're taking one step forward, 2 steps backwards. It's going through court. It's going through like different legal things. Like, this has been passed from like pillar to post with different solicitors, because obviously it's a very delicate situation. Now, at one stage when all this is going through, I'm not sure if it's like 2018, 2019, I've just like had enough of this whole ordeal. And obviously I've cut out quite a lot there. I could bang on about it like during this time and speak about how my life has gone during this time, but I think I'm going to recap all that at the end. But fast forward in like a couple of years, like I think it was like 2019, I thought, I've had enough of this. Like, I don't trust them with the half of the money. I don't, still don't to this day. I'm going to take everything. So I went out of my way to try and like take the entire estate for myself. And what I was going to do was to put my little brother's half into like a trust fund / like account for him. So like when he turns like 21, whatever, the money sat there for him. Because I trust me with his money, but I wasn't trusting him. I wasn't trusting them with his money. Do you know what I mean? So I decided to go my own way. In retrospect, was it the wrong decision? Probably not. Like, I think I'd do it again. Because at that moment in time, I knew it was right. I knew it's what my dad would have wanted me to do. I would have wanted to make sure that his other son was looked after. Obviously, so I'd definitely do it again, 100%. But this complicated things massively because obviously I was going my own way with the estate. They were going their own way with the estate. We had separate solicitors. It was like extremely close to going through with the courts, and it got dragged out of the courts. Then we went through COVID. And it has literally been an ongoing nightmare for this entire time, to be honest with you. Like, it has been, I can't put into words. I tried to say it on my story the other day that, like, if you imagine a black cloud that's just over you for like 5.5 years, that's pretty much what it's been. Like this week, I was speaking to Chris off camera before I started, and he was like, "What's new?" And obviously, I was going through it with him. I feel like I've floated through this week. The last 3 days, I've felt free. I've genuinely felt liberated these last like 3 days because I've had like no problem. And obviously, for the last like 5.5 years, I've had this hanging over my head. And you can't move on with your life when you were literally shackled by a legal position like that. Like, you can't do anything to the house because it's not your house. I'm getting threats of the house being repossessed by like banks and solicitors because the mortgage isn't being paid, but I can't pay the mortgage because it's in my dad's name and not mine. Like, my entire life was on hold. And this is kind of why I want to get it out there, because a lot of people don't know that's what I was actually dealing with. And it's such a delicate situation, and it's that rare that this happens that I've currently, well, not currently because it's all done, but at the time that this was all going through, I had 4 solicitors. I had like a probate solicitor, family solicitor, a transfer solicitor, and a conveyancing solicitor, right? And then I had to deal with my accountant, the land registry, so many different people I had to deal with. It was so imagine that, like, having a busy job, having a business, having your own life, and then you're like pinballing between like these 6 or 7 different people. Like, it was so mentally draining. It is unbelievable. Now, this obviously starts to take a turn when I try to take it my own way. And I'm not going to lie, for a while, I probably got looked at like the villain, like, oh, he was trying to take everything for himself, but I wasn't. Like, I couldn't have give a fuck about like a little bit of money. I just didn't trust them with his half of the money, because from what I seen from a personal level, what's happening with the money, trying to take 100 quid a month off me because I moved my friend in because I was feeling lonely. That for me is that's someone who has got the like priorities like lined up, and their priority was to just pick the fucking bones and take as much as they can do out of this, like drain it as much as they possibly can. Now, obviously this all got extended again because of like, it went to court, got took out of court, there was a conflict of interest, we had to go our separate ways with solicitors, they had their solicitors, I had mine, we had to find a neutral one between us. COVID hit, which obviously knocked everything backwards again, which is why it's taken like so long, like 5.5 years. It's that delicate of a situation, it's that rare that like my solicitor uses it as an example. She literally turned around, like she joked about, when I went in to sign something, she joked around and said like, I use your case as an example and go, we've had a guy who's waited 5.5 years for his house. And like, we use it as like a way to like explain how bad this can go. But even she turns around and is like, we've never known a case this bad. Like, trust it to land on me. I'm convinced with my life. I'm not really a big believer in faith or God or anything, but I think you get things thrust onto you that you can deal with. And I think because I am like a very resilient, very mentally strong guy, I get hit a lot by life, or I've been hit a lot, like I've been hit a lot in the past. Like right now, I have no problems. Like everything you've seen before this, like the business, the online coaching, the winning the competitions, the podcast, that was all great, but I still had this going in the background. Right now, I have 0 problems. I'm walking around like a free man, unshackled, out of prison, like out of a mental jail cell, walking around, loving life. So if we're fast forwarding now, and the last 2 years is where it starts to get like really, really tricky. So we pretty much agree the terms of what we want. Because imagine someone you fucking hate and they're trying to like take money off you and you're trying to get the best amount of money for yourself. And they're just being that way inclined about the whole thing. They're just literally turning around and trying to take everything they possibly can. Like, you're not going to be trusting. You're going to be very apprehensive. You're going to be very unsure on what their motives are. And ultimately, your walls are going to be up. So it's taken a while for us to kind of come to terms with what we want. My main priority was the house. Number one, because I've lived there for 8 years. Number two, it's because it's where I shared the last experiences and memories with my dad. That to me is more, that house is more than brick and mortar and like doors and windows. That house to me is an experience. It's a memory. It's something that I can never really let go of because it's where I spent the final moments of my dad, with my dad, before obviously he passed away. He's owned that house since I was like a young kid. I moved in when I was 21, 20, something like that. It was my house. And Dave even, like the other half again, like she turned around and was like, we think you should move out because obviously it's like, it's difficult for your brother to come around, like telling me I should move out my house. Like that's just, oh yeah, I'll just up sticks and move. Like that's not going to cause a massive problem to me. Do you know what I mean? This is what I've been dealing with for like 5.5 years, just like absolute delusion. So anyway, we come to terms with what we want. My main priority was the house. So this is what I mean now about the whole thing has just been like dragged out so much. I've paid privately to send off for like people to come out and value the house, people to come out and do these different things to speed up this process. And on their half, they've just kicked up a fuss the full time. So they've literally just turned around and been like, no, we don't agree with that valuation. It's not done by the correct value. It needs to be done by like a probate valuation, like something that's basically the same, but by someone else who's qualified. So I've paid like hundreds of people to come out and value the house. This has all been going through the solicitors and then they've kicked up a fuss. And then they've requested that someone comes out who was like specialized in this field. And yeah, we'll come out, do a probate valuation, whatever it is, like the amount of terminology I've had to keep hold of over the last 5.5 years. It's very draining, ladies and gentlemen, but hopefully you can understand where I'm coming from because it's got to get valued at the date of death and not current date. So obviously when my dad died, it has to get valued from that date. So they kick up a fuss about that. They get a different valuer in. They come out, value the house. I'm okay with the price. It's this close to going through. This is like 6 months ago, 7 months ago. No, we don't agree with the price. Bear in mind, these are the people that kicked up the fuss. And then when I go their way with it, they kick up a fuss about the thing that I've accepted on their terms. So this is what I've had to deal with. So my main priority was the house. We come to an agreement. I buy them out of so much of the house. And then I've got the outstanding mortgage left, and then that house is then mine. That is the agreement we've come to. So I have now got the mortgage, I own the house, and the probate is settled. Boom, bish, bash, bosh, job done, which is obviously great. But again, this has taken so long to go through. Because fast forwarding, because obviously that was the back end of last year. I'm not going to bore you with all the big legal side of things and the legal stories and what's been going on and trials and tribulations, because you just be bored to me because I'd just be talking about like legal lingo, which no one really knows about because obviously I've had to learn all this. But like, I can't explain to you, like, because obviously people will turn around. Like the other day, people were popping up and congratulating me about my house, which, listen, I was really fucking good. I can't believe how many people actually like popped up and was like engaging with that story. I just kind of got it out there. One, to get it off my chest, and to put it out there for people to like see like what I've had to be dealing with over all this time, because people don't know. It's a battle that I've been like fighting on my own for so long. So like 0.1% of people know this, probably even less. I could probably count on two hands how many people actually know about this story. Like, people don't know. So that's kind of why I put it out there. And the reason so many people engage with it is the reason I'm doing this podcast today. Because I seen it, I was like, like people are taking a lot from what I've said. They're taking a lot from the story I've put up. So they'll take a lot from the episode as well. So this is why I'm here doing this emergency podcast 2 days later. But people popping up to me going, congratulations on the house. It wasn't just the house. Now I can start my grieving process with my dad. Now I can start to actually do the house up the way I want it to do, because it needs a shitload of work. I can move on with my life. I can actually start to like put the next steps in place, because I've got big plans for myself. And this house has been holding me back, genuinely. How can you move on with your life when your life is literally shackled? You can't purchase the house. You can't pay the mortgage. You're getting threats of repossession. I had a letter come through 2 months. Imagine this. I had a letter through 2 months ago. Bear in mind, I've had 10 to 15, maybe 20 letters of this same type of context over the last like 5.5 years. I get a letter from Virgin Media, like the Virgin Bank, and they're like, you've got, I think it was 2 weeks to pay us 14,000. Otherwise, we're going to repossess the house. And then I ring my solicitors and I'm like, well, I'm going to end up paying it anyway because it's my mortgage and I've got a shed load saved up because I want to put a lot of money into the house. So I ring up my solicitor and go, why don't I just pay the 14,000 today? I've got a lot of money saved up and then that way it's dealt with. And she turned around to me, she's like, you can't pay it because it's not your house. Imagine that, like you've got a solution. But then they turn around and go, no, you can't, it's your dad's house. This is literally the nightmare I've been living in. I've been getting hit and pelted with these different things and I can't do anything. Like, because it's not my house, it's not my belonging, it's my dad's, and my dad's passed away. So that's what I've had to deal with. But the worst part of it all is, like, even today, like, I've still not grieved my dad, to be honest with you. And I know I'm going to basically hit the lowest low ever soon. Like right now, I feel like $1 million. Feels so good. I genuinely feel like I'm floating through the day. I'm smiling for no reason. Someone yesterday in the gym turned around to me and was like, you feel different to stand next to. You feel relaxed. You feel like you've got a different aura. And I was like, do I? And he was like, yeah, you just seem like a different person. And to be honest, I feel it. I feel like I talk different. I feel like I'm carrying myself differently. And I was saying to Chris off air before, like I feel like a weight has physically been pulled off my shoulders. I feel like I'm just now like in a completely different space mentally, which is obviously great. But I know for a fact I'm going to go through a massive low soon. I know that like I've got to come to terms with the fact that my dad isn't here because that has been pushed to the back of my mind. And I know you're sitting there going, Jamie, it's 5.5 years. Like, how have you not dealt with this? How can I? Like, how can I actually deal with the fact that this man is gone when all my attention and my energy has gone on actually battling this legal process and doing it single-handedly as well. Like I've had no family helping. No one's been interested on my dad's side of the family whatsoever. No one's checked in. Like no one's bothered. So I've been dealing with it on my own. So like the question is not like how haven't you? How can I? Like how can I go out of my way to actually grieve this man when it's been like physically and emotionally impossible for me to do so? So I know the next few weeks is going to be a very difficult time for me because I'm actually going to have to sit down and come to terms with the fact that my dad actually isn't here. Because it still feels like he's here at times. So I've not really processed it. I've not really registered that like he's passed away. Do you know what I mean? So I'm going to have to come to terms with that. And then like it's something that I've not had to cross just yet. Like, yeah, I've had my moments where I've sat there and I've like been upset about it and I've cried about it. And even on like certain things like his birthday, when I go to see his grave and everything, like that's how busy I've been. I've not even managed to like sort his grave yet. Like he's been buried with my nan for like 5.5 years. His name's not even on the grave. Like I've not had any time. I've not had any time to like find the grave deed, get the grave sorted, get it like, what's the word? Like get it in, like the scripture, like inscripted or something like that. Like I've not had time to do any of that. So this is all the thing that I've like kind of got to deal with now. So I know I'm going to go through a very low time. And one thing about me is people who are listening, like random listeners, because I know like I've been getting a lot of new people who I don't know listening on Spotify and YouTube and stuff like that. Like you don't know me personally, but people who like follow me on Instagram, people that follow me through social media, you'll know that I'm a very no bullshit, get it done, fuck your feelings type of guy. Like, regardless of what you're feeling, get your shit done. And like, that is exactly how I've built the life that I've managed to build over the last like 5 years with all of this going on in the background. But one thing I don't want anyone to get confused is that first and foremost, I am a person. I'm not a coach. I'm not a trainer. I'm not a men's physique bodybuilder. I'm not a podcaster. I'm a person. First and foremost, that is what I am. I feel the same as you. I go through the same pain. I feel things exactly the same way that you would. And naturally, that is going to take its toll on me. I have the same brain as everyone else. Obviously, I've calloused it a bit differently. I've trained it a bit differently. I always say like I'm wired very different to the average person. But I am a person first and foremost, and that is something that I'm going to have to like deal with over the next couple of weeks. And I think it's very easy to forget that because I do try and put out a lot of content. I try to obviously be a smiley face. I try to be the positive guy that everyone takes something from. But I'm not saying it's a mask, and I'm not saying it's a front because it's not. That is a part of me. But I am a person, and when that camera is off and when my phone's not in my hand, I have a normal life like everybody else. And that's why I've made the decision to take a couple of weeks away from work, which is not like me. I have not done that whatsoever since the entire time I've been back in this industry. But I just, like, for me to turn around and say mentally I'm okay after all this would just be a lie. And I'm very big on people to, like, recharge the batteries, look after the mental health, basically put themselves first where needed. Like, yeah, get stuff done even the days that you don't want to. Like, be disciplined, but at the same time, like, be sensible. Like, if you were going through a loss, if you're going through a tragic event and you come through it and you've took everything out of yourself to get there, you might need a couple of weeks just to kind of like recharge. That is what I'm going to be doing. So that is like that is kind of the angle that I wanted to come across on with this podcast today, is that I've had all this going on. I'm a normal person and I've still kind of like managed to make something great for myself. So that's the story side of it, pretty much boxed off. Like, you know pretty much what has happened. There's still a lot more to the story that I'm just not delving into because it's far too personal for me to get into. Like, obviously, this is probably the most personal thing like I've ever spoken about. Maybe that in the first episode that I did. But this is, without a doubt, the most stressful, like, mentally draining thing I've ever had to endure. Because as I said before, completely shackled by it, can't move on with my life, very frustrated by the whole thing. So yeah, it is going to be like priority for me to get a couple of weeks just to reset and recharge. Now, this is kind of what I want to get at, and this is why I think this episode is really, really important, is I always preach that I'm untalented. I always preach that I'm an average person. And a lot of people turn around to me and go, you're not. Listen, I am, right? I'm a very average guy who works extremely hard, right? I've come from a disadvantaged background. I've been through a lot of turmoil, been through a lot of stressful times, as you can tell from this podcast. And I've made something really good for myself. Like, I'm so happy with my life. And I know a lot of people, like, you hear this a lot, but like, if God took me tomorrow, like, I will die a happy man. I would die a happy man because I've done a lot with my life. So this is the angle I kind of want to come at you from. Like, the other day I said on my story, if you wait for the right time, you're going to wait forever. Like, you will never get anything done because the time is never right. It's never going to feel right. And regardless of what your goal is, it's never going to feel right to go to therapy. It's never going to feel right to lace up your shoes and go for a run. It's never going to feel right to do any of these things that is going to aid you in self-development and self-progression. There is no right time. There is. The right time is now. Just do it. But you're never going to feel like it's right. And the other day on my story, I turned around and said that if I waited for the right time, that day, the 28th of February, 2023, which I'll never forget because it was like the day, the most stressful time of my life ended, I would have started everything on that date. I'd have launched being a PT. I'd have launched being an online coach. I'd have started going into prep for my competition. I'd have launched my podcast. I did all of these things while I had all this shit going on in the background. Don't tell me that that was the right time, because it wasn't the right time. Like, ultimately, if you wait around for things to feel right, you're going to wait forever. Because one thing that you do, and like, I'm not an advocate of it, but I'm a huge believer in, is if you sit in your own shit long enough, it stops smelling. And you're probably thinking, where's the relevance here? Like, what are you on about? Like, we can become accustomed to what is a negative environment. We can become accustomed to what is a bad life, so to speak. And that becomes your new norm. And it's almost like your frequency gets brought down by your circle of people, your environment, your job, your health, all these different things. And if you're used to being here and then your frequency gets brought down to here, at first that feels different. But eventually that's going to come down and that's going to become your new norm, right? That doesn't feel right. That will not sit right with you. So if you're sitting there thinking, right, well, my frequency's here, I'm going to wait for it to go to here, and then I'll start. You're going to wait till the day you die. You're never going to do anything. Like, change is not supposed to be easy. Change is very, very, very difficult. You're establishing new routines. You're reversing negative habits. None of these things are going to feel comfortable. But life hits you all the time. Like, I know I'm sitting here now as a problem-free man. I'll get another problem soon, tomorrow, next month, next year. I'll face more problems, but I'm not going to immediately stop doing everything that I'm doing because I'm facing more problems. I said a quote the other day, which is very, very cringy, and I'm going to turn around and hit you with it again today. Life isn't about waiting for the storm to pass. It's about learning how to dance in the rain. And that is true. It's about learning how to get your shit done, even when you don't want to get your shit done. Because if you wait to do things on the days that you feel good, you're never going to actually get anything done. Because truth be told, anyone who is a winner and has like a great like mentality, so to speak, they don't wait for those times. It's about like embracing the suck and getting it done. Because let's say, for example, let's break this down with maths, right? Say if you, I don't know, 3 days a week, and that's quite common. People probably feel this even worse, like more in terms of frequency. Say if there's 3 days a week you cannot be bothered doing anything, right? And on those 3 days, you listen to your brain and go, do it tomorrow, do it Tuesday, do it next week, right? Let's break that down. So over the course of a year, my math isn't great, but 3 days a week, 52 weeks a year, you're probably looking at like just over 150 days a year. It's nearly half the year that you've taken off in terms of productivity because you've not felt up to it. And this is what I'm getting at. If you move forward on your good days, 10%, right? And on your bad days, you move forward 1%. You're still moving forward. And at the end of the day, as I've just said, 150 days, you've gone up 150% because you've stayed committed on your bad days. If I waited for all this to pass, if I waited 5.5 years, I'd be out of shape. I'd still be out of love for myself. I'd still be working a job that I hate. I wouldn't have like great people around me. My life, I wouldn't be sat here talking to you. I would be at home like a shell of a man that I was like 5.5 years ago. Like, as I've mentioned, I have hurt a lot of people in the last 5.5 years. I've taken my emotions out on a lot of people. I've done things wrong. I've made mistakes. And luckily, I've found a way to forgive myself for them. But that isn't a good time. That isn't the right time. This entire thing has been a fucking drain. And like, if I waited, I would be in the position now where I was 5.5 years ago. So if you were sitting there today, and this is kind of what I want to go through with this, if you're sitting there today waiting for the right time to get out there and work on yourself, I've got news. You're going to be waiting a while, probably forever, because life will constantly test you. Life will constantly hit you with things. As I said earlier on, I think life has a way of giving you tasks that are difficult, but you can just manage. And it's up to us whether or not we're going to go that extra 10 yards, 15 yards, and actually work on ourselves as well. Like, say, for example, if you break down your day and you have like 1 to 2 hours a day where you can work on yourself, like that might not seem like a while. If you want to sit down and kind of recover from how difficult the days were, oh my God, thank God that's over. I'm going to sit on the couch, flick the telly on, I can't be bothered dealing with all this again tomorrow. You're not going to go anywhere, but if you like devote those hour or two to like doing what I said earlier on, like reading, meditating, getting out, going to the gym, working on yourself, putting the correct steps in place for you to actually take a step forward with your life will propel forward. Your life will fly forward at like an unbelievable rate. Trust me. An hour or two of productivity a day will take you so far, but you've got to identify that it isn't going to feel right at the time. It really isn't. Like, you've got to be in a position where you are willing to pull your socks up and move forward. And that is why I wanted to speak. There's a couple of reasons I wanted to speak about this. One, so people know, and they know exactly what I'm going through, and I've been through, and I've conquered, ultimately, been through it all, beat it all, which is nice. I can move on with my life. People got to know me a little bit better, got to know me a little bit more as a person, which is obviously the idea of this podcast. But ultimately, because if I can do it, a snot-nosed kid from a council estate who was born into pretty much nothing, like, you can. Like, I'm not special. I'm just a guy who works hard and actually, like, kills himself day to day. And it's just that, like, I actually choose to do the productive things. It's not that I'm any different to you. There's probably, like, 1 billion more people in the world that are more talented than me. Like, it's about getting it done on the days that you don't really feel up to it. So that is kind of what I wanted to go through. You know me, I'm a very cringy, productive, like, take the positive out of anything type of guy. And that is where this is coming from. That regardless of the situation, you can get stuff done. The situation either controls you or you control the situation. The same with circumstances. Either you beat the circumstances or the circumstances beat you. Life will always hit you hard. It's about you hitting life back harder. And the moment that you realize that and actually start to take steps forward, your whole quality of life will change. Whole quality of life. Your mentality will change. Like, the perception you've got of yourself, things like that will all take a huge step forward. but it isn't going to work until you identify that. So if there's one thing today that I want you to take from this episode, it's this. It's literally that you can get shit done. Jamie has had a shitload going on in the background, and he's managed to create something quite successful for himself, and he's an average guy. So why can't you? So off the back of it, if you're still listening to this, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on Spotify, this is your sign that if you're going through a bad time, bad times will always, always pass. Tough times don't last, tough people do. And ultimately, in the middle of all that, it's not about waiting for that storm to pass. It's about you learning to dance in the rain. It's about you learning how you can be productive and move forward with your life whilst all this is going on in the background. Hope you found this enjoyable. If there's anything that you need from me off the back of what I've just said, please drop me a message on Instagram. Yeah, thank you for listening, and I'll be back. I think it's going to be next week, actually. I think I'm going to be dropping 3 podcasts in a row. Today, next week, and the week after. So, yeah, triple header. Thank you for listening, and I'll catch up with you then.